What is good, wrestling people? What's up, everyone? Episode 68, Solo Dolo Pod. Tag team partner Moody is not available this weekend. He's out on some family business. Sunday Percy's. I don't really have much in line other than, podcast update. It is a Solo Dolo episode. Um, Anything to really kind of get into? We could just talk about what happened last week. Again, this week was the NBA kickoff. So we had last week on our Thursdays, we talked about things that we were excited for. I had mentioned Victor Wembanyama and just seeing his third year and seeing the development. And sure enough, we're 2 games into the season, and dude has looked like a legit MVP candidate. As much you can say, we still have 80 games left in the season. But first game against the what was it? The Lakers, 40 points. The ridiculous reverse jam where it barely even left the ground. It was crazy. And then last night he dropped another 29 and another win, overtime win. Shea has been killing it too. That was a great game. The first week on again, and then the other aspect of it was also the NBA and NBC. They killed it on their first night. It's only the first night. There's still a long season to kind of get through, but over and all, so far the NBA is back, and it being on NBA on NBC has been dope. And Victor Wembanyama has been so far through 2 games has been living up to expectations. So that's been exciting as hell. And looking forward to it. My Wizards surprisingly got a win last night against Cooper Flag and the Dallas Mavericks. Keyshawn George, career high with 34 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, three steals, and 2 blocks. Killing it across the board. So good to have basketball back. We're out here on the porch still on a brisk October, not brisk, but it's getting a little bit chilly. I got my blanket on my lap, got my hoodie up and everything like that. So let's see how long we go. Hopefully it's going to get nicer as the pod goes through and the sun starts to come out and shine a little bit. But let's keep that pretty simple. We got a good week of wrestling to get through. We got AEW Wrestle Dream to recap. We got Halloween Havoc tonight, so we got predictions on the line and some other major news that happened throughout the week. But let's just get into the show.
Doors opening. Step back to allow customers to exit.
What is the Howard? Hey, Samson. Always here with my tag team partner, even spirit, the French Rock Bro, with me coming off the top rope. And this is the Wrestling Rehab Podcast. Weekly stroll through the avenue of wrestling. Follow us on all social medias, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok. Follow us on all the Spotify podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, we everywhere. Like, subscribe, comment, do everything. What up, everybody? Episode 68. And I did a quick search of 68. Usually Moody does all that search up stuff. But episode 68 of the Wrestling Rehab Podcast. Notable 68s in sports history. We had Yob Mariager, Cap legend. And he's also played with a bunch of teams. That dude's still actually playing. I actually saw an article. He's still playing, number 68. Saw Albert Pujols was listed at 68, which I got to look back up because I'm like, I feel like he wore a different number because 68 in baseball just seems like a weird number. Offensive tackles we're still in the lane of offensive tackles. So Jordan Mailata for the Philadelphia Eagles is 68. I think Deacon Jones is a defensive lineman. I believe he wore 68. And I think they also said Taylor Lewan is also a 68. But nonetheless, we are here again, Solo Dolo Pod. My tag team partner, will be back next week as we gear up for Saturday night's main event, which is already looking pretty good. We got at least three championship matches on the line next week for Saturday night's main event. We know we're going to get a new champion next week when we have the Jey Uso versus CM Punk match for the World Heavyweight Championship. But first, before we get into all that, let's get into the Raw recap and let's take ourselves direct. Well, let's get into actually not the Raw recap. Let's get into actually the recap of AEW's Wrestle Dream. We had a pop-up show. We already knew coming into the card that we were going to come out as a draw. We pretty much we obviously agreed on everything, but we did not get everything right. And we started the show 0-2, where both of us had picked Thekla to beat Jamie Hayter. That did not happen. Thekla lost. Pretty good match. Jurassic Express beat the Young Bucks. Again, that's what happens when you believe in your own booking. Last week, I convinced Moody. He had picked Jurassic Express, but I just had convinced Moody that, hey, it would be entertaining to see the Young Bucks win the money again and then the other brother lose it. But that did not happen. The Young Bucks ended up losing. Though, interesting again, no interference from anybody really, but we did see that Kenny Omega did come out afterwards and ended up helping out the Jurassic Express. So it's going to be interesting, the dynamic between the Young Bucks and the Kenny Omega moving forward and how that kind of handles itself out. The Hurt Syndicate defeated the Demand for the umpteenth time. Not shocking there, excuse me. The AEW TNT Championship. One of my favorite matches on the card was Kyle Fletcher ended up retaining over Mark Briscoe. As much as I want Mark Briscoe to win, again, at some point you got to pull the trigger. We'll talk about it when we get to the Dynamite recap, but we have another one of their matches coming up on the line, and hopefully at that point, Mark Briscoe is able to pull the win and finally obtain some singles titles, especially in the TNT Championship. Chris Statlander defended her title successfully against Toni Storm, which was another A+ match, I thought. Very entertaining. And then at the end of it, Toni Storm and Chris Statlander, they were professional and they respected one another. They hugged it out and they kind of gave their salutes, which was interesting also because then right after that, you had the Mercedes Open Challenge, but Chris Statlander was still on the ring at the time. And so they had a little bit of a standoff. Mercedes was basically jawing at her, telling her to get out of her ring. Then she called out, who do you want to challenge? At the time when we were making our predictions, we did not have the stipulation that it had to be a former champion. At some point, they added that stipulation. So fortunately, obviously, we listed a bunch of names, but then if you go back to the episode, the first name that I did mention was Mina Shirakawa. And that ended up being the challenger. I thought it was a pretty good match. Some people were not as entertained by it, but I thought Mercedes is still is been killing it for what she's been doing in this run, and then Mina Shirakawa is also a legit boss. It was up for her Ring of Honor television title, which she had recently won. She was the interim champion, so that almost kind of gave you a clue that she was probably going to lose it. And sure enough, she did. And Mercedes Moné ended up winning another title. So that was, I believe, 12 or maybe 11 at that point, because even she had won a title the night before in Mexico. So she had worked up back-to-back nights. At this point right now, she's as 12 belt Ultimo Moné, as she has the official record for having most title belts concurrently held at the same time. Again, enjoyable match. And then after the match, we had Chris Statlander come back out and then end up attacking Mercedes and hitting her in her finishing move. So that storyline is obviously going to be continuing to build. We have Brodito versus the Don Callis family of Okada and Takeshita, and this is probably the best match on the entire card, in my opinion. Brodito ended up winning, but like we said in the predictions episode, that this match is really not about Brodito, but about the relationship between Okada and Takeshita. And I was hook, line, and sinker when Okada hit the Rainmaker accidentally, quote unquote, on Takeshita, and he looked so. At first, he acting wise was A+ S tier, because he looked so shocked and remorseful in the moment. Initially, in the moment when he hit his teammate Takeshita with the Rainmaker, and then they did the close up, and then you see that this dude is laughing his ass off and ends up giving him the middle finger. That is just Okada is just that he's playing the dastardly heel amazingly well. And obviously that storyline is going to continue as well. But Brodito, again, great match. Probably the best match on the card was Brodito over Okada and Takeshita. We had Hangman retaining his title against Samoa Joe, which was also a pretty fun match. And then the real surprise twist at the end of it was not only Joe, but the rest of the ops jumping Hangman and turning heel on in the industry, so in AEW. So that should be an interesting storyline to continue forward, especially Joe as a heel. Obviously, Joe is just a great mic talker, whether he's a heel or a face. But I think when you have him in this predicament, it's going to be really entertaining. And then finally, we end the show with the I Quit match between Darby Allin and Jon Moxley. And there was kind of split opinions on how this match. I mean, I thought this was a pretty entertaining match. I don't think it was probably their best match, but it still was entertaining. Not as gnarly as we expected it to be, as you would imagine. I thought, like, we started early when Jon Moxley had whatever those kind of like wooden sticks were, and he was trying to dig under the nails. And I'm like, man, if that was telling Moody when we were watching, I was like, hey, if this is how they're gonna start off the match, or early on, this is like the violence that we're getting, is probably just that's level one. It's probably gonna get more insane as we continue on, but it never really got more higher than that. The biggest thing that kind of came out of it was Jon Moxley ended up having a fish tank in the ring and then started to drown Darby Allin. People were calling it waterboarding. It's not, but still, nonetheless, it was probably still pretty like, yo, are we going to, again, with a lot of these AEW match shows, and especially when they do these kind of death match type of matches, I was like, how far are we going to go, like, to suspend our disbelief, or just like, are we really going to do something serious here? Obviously, it's a TV show, so it's not going to happen like that. But nonetheless, it was still an extreme moment in the match. But that's not how the match ended. Darby, as you know, is never going to quit. Moxley was whooping his ass, but obviously, Darby Allin is never going to say, I'm quit. The lights go out, and then who appears out of nowhere? The legend, Sting, comes out to help his adopted son, Darby Allin, takes out everyone, and Darby Allin ends up putting on the Scorpion Deathlock, and then within minutes, not even minutes, within like immediately after, as soon as he put the Scorpion Deathlock on, he pretty much tapped out. And so I think that's where most people's, reservations, or I guess negativity, kind of comes around the match, was that, because even in the moment when I saw that, I was like, man, he really just kind of tapped him out. He really didn't even kind of milk it. The whole time Darby was getting his ass whooped, but then it just took really a Sting interference and a Scorpion Deathlock to just make Moxley say, I quit. I know they were pressed for time because they were really coming up right up on the clock. It was about to be like 12:30 at that moment, so they really had to get off the show. So there's a lot of things going on. It still kind of works with the overall storyline of Moxley and where his character is headed, as far as just being someone that has lost within, like, I think about 2 consecutive matches now to Darby Allin. And so maybe there's some self-doubt that is creeping into Moxley's character, and he's not the guy that he says he is. But overall, I still enjoy this card, this show. AEW is probably right now, and we talked about this off pod with Moody and I, but we're probably going to have during the uppies our best brand award. And right now, it's an easy pick for me. It's AEW. This might not have been their best pop-up show of the year, but that's a high bar to clear when every pop-up show that you put out is pretty much S tier, top shelf. So if anything, I probably put this at Primo, but it's like Primo staring across the line of top shelf. But overall, still enjoyed it. It was a draw between both of us. Overall record. Season record is 4, 5, and 7 for me, which you just do the inverse of that for Moody. He has 5 wins, 4 losses, and 7 ties. So we're still keeping it 500. I'm playing a little bit more logical than I did in my first season. And overall, I'm still trying to cut into that lead, but how much can I cut into the lead when we're just playing 500 ball right now? Overall, it's 9 losses for me, 9 wins for me, 17 losses, and 12 ties. So we got to get some of these ties out and get some wins. That's not going to happen this week. I can tell you right now. We are drawing for Halloween Havoc, but we'll get to that when we get to those picks. But overall, great episode, great show, pop-up show for AEW Wrestle Dream. We'll get into the aftermath when we get to the coffee shop, when we get to Dynamite. But let's get into Raw, and the biggest thing to come out of Raw, and we talked about it last week. There was rumor or word on the street that Seth Rollins was legitimately hurt We talked about what that meant. How is that going to play out, especially when you already said that Seth Rollins was hurt earlier in the year when he really wasn't, and he came back in a couple weeks to reclaim his title. We have brought it up. Hey, does he have to relinquish the title? Sure enough, he didn't relinquish it, which I thought was a weird kind of phrasing of it, but I'm not going to say anything. Yeah, it's not a negativity, but I thought it was just weird phrasing. But I have this as Shake. Moody had this listed. Doesn't have this listed anywhere really. But Seth Rollins was stripped of his World Heavyweight Championship by Adam Pearce because of injury. And there was a battle royal later in that night to determine the other contender to face CM Punk at Saturday night's main event to crown a new world heavyweight champion. He also mentioned that Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed will not be a part of that battle royal due to their actions. In storyline kayfabe, they blamed their attack on Seth Rollins last week as the reason why he got hurt, when we all know that it was from the coast-to-coast headbutt that he did to Cody Rhodes at the last pop-up show. I'm blanking on the name. Crown Jewel? Yeah, I think it was Crown Jewel. And so in that's really disappointing. And again, I put it in shade because it's an injury. It's a legit injury. But again, it sucks when you play the fake injury storyline just like a couple months ago, and then a legit injury actually occurs, and he actually have to take him off because it says he's going to be out for months. So that's just extremely unfortunate. So Shake is probably the best place I could put it, but it just really sucks that it happened. And obviously, everyone knows Seth Rollins is my guy, so it really sucks about that. But the Battle Royale, we both have this as a mid, about 17 people in there. So it's weird to have an odd number in there. But Jey Uso ends up winning the Battle Royal. The last three members of the match, actually, the last four members of the match were Jimmy, Jay, LA Knight, and who was it? Jimmy, Jay, LA Knight, and Dominic Mysterio. Dominic actually got eliminated earlier in the match, but the referees didn't see it. When we have all these cameras and it's clearly Adam Pearce is watching the match on the backstage, so I'm like, can't you do something about this? But he ended up getting back into the match without anybody saying that he was actually eliminated. Jimmy and LA Knight were scrapping on the ropes, and Jay had an opportunity and he took it to throw both of them out. And Jimmy was super tight because earlier in the match, Jimmy had saved Jay from elimination at least twice. And so afterwards, Jimmy was so distraught. He was yapping back at his brother while his brother was celebrating and things like that. Jay having no remorse as far as like, hey, I had to do what I had to do. So that's an interesting, seems like we're gearing back up for a brother versus brother match. Internet wrestling community side on as far as this match, apparently this was one of the WWE's most disliked videos of Jey Uso. I don't know why. It's unusual. Obviously, it doesn't mean anything, and WWE further said that when they were asked about it, I think from Fightful, that no, we see those things, but those don't dictate storylines, and that they're not going to change the direction that they're going, and they shouldn't have to, because again, it's all about the story, the long-term booking. People are going in on talking about it and like within the moment, but you got to see how the whole picture paints out. And so I'm not mad of it. I think it was pretty. The reason it's here and mid for I think both of us, I can probably say, was pretty obvious what was going to happen. Not too surprising. I think maybe you could have said maybe Dominic probably could have won it. I personally would have, just for the fact that Dominic was there and he's a heel and he could probably pull it out. But I was telling others, I was like, Dominic is way too busy. He's already got two other people that he's dealing with. To add this into his storylines is just overworking him at this point. I personally thought LA Knight was going to win, and I think that's where a lot of the animosity from some fans comes with, is that I guess they're tired of seeing Jey Uso. But again, the storylines make sense, so I'm not terribly mad. And again, it just makes LA Knight just more. When LA Knight ends up getting to that point where he ends up winning that title, which I do believe he will win the title at some point, because that dude's just way too over not to put the title on him. It's going to be a fire moment, but that was a very fun match. And now we have CM Punk and Jey Uso at Saturday night's main event to crown a new World Heavyweight Champion. I'm curious to see if that actually plays out. Like, does the Bronson and Braun security do anything, or do they just let the match play out? Who knows what happens, but that should be fun and entertaining to see next week on Saturday night's main event. We'll get to our primo, and it is a surprise title change. So we had 3 title matches on this card. We had Maxine getting a match against Becky Lynch for the Women's Intercontinental Championship. We had there was the other title match I'm blanking on right now. Dominic Mysterio versus Penta for the Men's Intercontinental Championship. And then the biggest one, and the one that had the most of that actually did have a title change, was AJ Styles, about to say Lee. AJ Styles and Dragon Lee defeated the Judgment Day to become the new tag team champions. And overall, just great match. And then even the surprising that they actually pulled a trigger on this, because you would think that Judgment Day would somehow find a way to win, but they didn't. And we have new tag team champions, and thank God, because it just seems like whenever you don't know what to do with the tag team division, especially on Raw, you just kind of throw the belts on Judgment Day, and they just look like great props for them to walk around. Not saying that Finn Balor and JD McDonough are not qualified to hold those belts. They're obviously great in-ring wrestlers, but the Judgment Day's had the title belts on and off. How many? They're getting up there with, like, I feel like the New Day and the Street Profits as far as like how many title reigns they've had collectively with any kind of machination of whatever kind of lineup they've had of tag teams. That, hey, I'm excited, especially if this is being AJ's last run. It might be his last title belt that he might hold in WWE. That AJ Lee, that's what happens when you put AJ Styles and Dragon Lee together. You get people saying AJ Lee when there's actually a wrestler named AJ Lee. AJ Styles and Dragon Lee are the new tag team champions. That was the primo of the show. And it was, best thing that we each saw on this card this night. Containing one of the title matches, Becky Lynch Maxine defeated Becky Lynch again this time. She's 0-2. It wasn't through a regular pinfall. I think it was, again, another disqualification, because I think Becky ended up grabbing the title belt and hitting Maxine. But again, Maxine was pushing Becky to her limits. Again, they're making you believe that Maxine can do it, and I think she's going to do it. I'm going to be excited when Maxine gets that title belt. She's worked her ass off, and it's going to be fun. And I like seeing this descent and this craziness. Becky's playing her. This is kind of Becky's, I feel like, one of her best versions of her hero character that she's played in her career, because she's playing this kind of like, oh, no, this didn't happen. You didn't see it correctly. This, that, and the third. So it's going to be fun when Maxine actually pulls off the win and actually gets the win over Becky Lynch and becomes a new Women's Intercontinental Champion. That's at least what I'm predicting. But before that, we also had Becky confront Paul Heyman and about, her husband getting attacked, and basically saying that her husband Seth is not really concerned. He knew that you were eventually going to turn on him. It was just a matter of when. She called him a penguin face prick, which obviously that looks hilarious because he does actually look like the Penguin from the series, the show, The Penguin, and the Batman with Robert Pattinson and whatnot. And she said that he's going to take out, when he comes back, he's going to take out Bronson and Braun. But Paul don't really need to worry about it, because he's not really anything to him. He's just, a bystander in this situation. So it was good continuation. For whatever reason, you think, I don't know why. I mean, sure, you throw your shot out there, but Paul was still saying, like, hey, there's still a role for you, Becky, in the vision. Like, she was going to do that, which makes no sense. But hey, shoot your shot. You never know. But overall, great backstage confrontation between Becky Lynch and Paul Heyman back there. So Becky Lynch, again, great show overall for her. We both really enjoyed that. The only thing that we have left on here, and this was for me, this kind of ties back to the third title match that we had, was the Dominic Mysterio retaining against Penta. But it's not necessarily just even the match. It's more just Dominic Mysterio in general. And this is not anything negative to him, but I have this in my shake, but I call it the curious case of Dominic Mysterio, because it's really interesting to see his matches where he's clearly supposed to be a heel, but you never but by the crowd reactions that he has, you can never tell that this man is a heel. This man is getting more pop than people like Penta and he's getting face cheers. Like compare like when they do those back and forth punches between Dominic and whoever else he's facing, and it's obviously a face on the other side, the face gets booed and Dominic gets cheered. And it's like, I understand it when it was The Rock and that where he's just that charismatic. Not saying Dominic's not charismatic, but it just feels like it feels like he's his character, not his character, but I guess it feels like in non-kayfabe, he's in a weird predicament where it's like, do you eventually move him over to being an Eddie Guerrero kind of face where obviously he cheats, but I'm not sure. It's just, I'm very curious to see how, from a storyline perspective and a creative perspective, how they play this out, because it just seems a little odd. Because again, you watch the shows with Dominic with someone that doesn't watch wrestling, and they would not have any idea that Dominic Mysterio is the heel. And I think a lot of it just comes from irony, because we know Dominic, we know he was this 8-year-old little boy, and it's all ironic cheering, and it doesn't necessarily feel like it's character driven. It's more of just, we know who you are, we like you, you're entertaining, which is not a problem at all. There's nothing against him. It has nothing to do with him at all, really. It's more of just, at what point do you kind of move away from this dastardly heel to someone that is actually just kind of like, again, leaning more into that Eddie Guerrero, when Eddie Guerrero was a face and he was still doing the lie, cheating, and stealing. It feels like you might want to do that sooner than later, because it just seems very odd that, like, no matter who you put him with, you could put him in with the biggest face. You could put him in with Cody Rhodes if you wanted to, and Cody's going to get booed, it feels like, and Dominic Mysterio is going to get cheered, and it's all because of irony. So, nothing negative. It's just more something I'm keeping my eye out on as Dominic's character kind of evolves or just continues to progress. He's obviously killing it. He's been an MVP for the brand, and I'm just very curious to see how it plays out, because it's a very odd thing to see when, again, you're watching someone like Penta in the ring with him, and it's just like, man, like, this dude Penta's clearly the face and Dominic is clearly the heel, but people don't care that Dominic cheats every single time and takes the hammer from the boot, takes the hammer from the ring bell and stuffs it in his boot and all that. It's like, yes, we get it. We've seen it. There's a bit of an ode to Eddie within it, but it's like, you're still the heel. Like, there's not done in a way where you're doing it as a face, you're doing it as a heel. So there's a weird dichotomy between how this character plays out, but how the crowd is receiving it. So again, I don't believe WWE is going to force the face turn on him, but I do think and I hope it's going to come organically. I just wonder, is that happening sooner or later? Does it happen when the Judgment Day split happens? I don't know. Just something I'm keeping my eye out, that I'm calling the curious case of Dominic Mysterio. But that was Raw, a pretty decent show. Gave us some intrigue. Obviously, the bummer of the news of Seth Rollins being having to relinquish. They say stripped. I'm saying relinquished, because how are you going to strip somebody that is clearly can't compete? Obviously, he relinquished, but maybe you say Seth Rollins wasn't going to relinquish it. He was just going to hold the belt in kayfabe. Whatever. But we obviously have our title match set for next week, and storylines are progressing, so it was a pretty entertaining show overall. Let's move over to the bodega, and it's another lukewarm show, in my opinion, for NXT. This is the go-home show for Halloween Havoc, which is tonight. Pretty tame. The best thing on this card, and both of our opinions from Moody and I, was Leon Slater defeating Stax for the retaining his X Division Championship. Javon Evans was out there on the side on commentary. He put on the headset and was having a good old time and whatnot. There were some fun interactions between Javon and Adriana Rizzo and things of that nature. Almost makes it seem like, I wonder if they're going to continue that kind of storyline with Stax and Rizzo and Leon Slater and Javon Evans and whatnot. But obviously, anytime you get the high flyer in there like Leon Slater, it's just going to be always entertaining. He hits it well. Some of the moves didn't obviously hit to perfection as always, but still was an entertaining match. And again, this probably would have been mid, but I think the interactions between Rizzo, Stacks, and how that kind of all played out. Just kind of add, and then Javon's commentary added it up to why I would kind of bump this up to a primo. It just got into primo. It's not looking over the line at top shelf, but it just crossed the line of mid into primo the way I'm looking at it. But still, probably the best thing on this card. So for NXT, other than that, we had a lot of mids in here. Another bummer out here was Sol Ruka relinquishing her NXT and North American title. I guess not really relinquishing, but she is legitimately injured. She's not able to compete against Blake Monroe to defend her NXT North American Championship. This would have been in not mid, shake, but it's in mid because they built it into a storyline where Zarya says that she can defend her title for her on her behalf on Halloween Havoc. So instead of Blake Monroe versus Sol Ruka, we are getting Zarya defending the North American Championship against Blake Monroe. Just for that kind of mix up that mix up on storyline, I'm intrigued by it. I think it plays well within the I guess not fraction, but I guess like the you can tell there's a little bit of not tension. I'm blanking on the word, but you can tell there's a little bit of friction, I guess, between Sol Ruka and Zarya the last few weeks. That as we get to our predictions, I wouldn't be surprised that if Zarya ends up losing the title for Sol Ruka and Blake Monroe ends up becoming new NXT Women's Champion. But I think it was smart because I think Sol Ruka is legitimately hurt. But you didn't want to have on back-to-back night episodes where you're relinquishing the title and then having to do another battle royale to define who's going to be the new NXT, who's going to be the number one contender to kind of establish who this champion is. That, hey, let's just do something a little different. While she has a tag team partner. Her tag team partner is a huge muscle. She clearly looks very intimidating, especially against someone like Blake Monroe. That, hey, why don't you defend it for her? That I thought it was a good way of doing something different than you already did the night before, where again someone else is legitimately hurt, and you just didn't want to run the same storyline back to back on consecutive nights. So just for that, it gets bumped up to a mid, and then there's an intrigue of like what happens in this relationship, especially if Zarya ends up losing for the belt, her belt to Blake Monroe. What does that look like and the impact between Sol Ruka and Zarya's relationship moving forward? So just for that, we move that up to a mid. Other mids that we agreed upon, Ricky Saints and Trick Williams contract signing for the heavyweight championship. For Halloween Havoc for the NXT Championship. Typical contract signing. You know, it gets mid because there was some good passion on both sides, especially Ricky talking his talk and, you know, putting some respect on his name that I'm like, all right. I mean, again, contract signings are contract signings. You don't take much from them. But again, I like the passion that Ricky was speaking with, and it got you engaged and excited for what we're going to see tonight between him and Trick for the NXT Championship. This is then where we split our mids. I have this as we have the same two things, but I have one of them I have as a mid, and Moody as a shake, and then the vice versa. So we'll start with my mid here. My last mid is the Broken Hardys are coming for the Dark State. So there was a promo vignette of the Hardys on the Hardy compound and them kind of cutting this really creepy promo and walking through their facilities and whatnot. And they go into what I guess, again, Moody's more familiar with the TNA and the Broken Matt Hardy version of the storylines within that, but he says he has this as his shake. The Hardys bring back the Lake of Reincarnation, where both Matt and Jeff walk into their lake that they have, and they both come out as Broken Matt Hardy and Brother Nero, and they're coming for the Dark State at Halloween Havoc. And I forget the title of the match right now, but again, just more intrigue, and then again, it fits with the Halloween aesthetic because we are a couple days away from Halloween. That this should be a fun match. I'm like, okay, this would be fun. It's a nice little gimmick change up, especially because we just saw this match 2 weeks ago. I was flipping on between who might win Dark State versus Hardys, but I think this might give me a little bit of an edge to go with the Hardys for this match. And then what Moody had as a shake, as a mid, and I had as a shake was the Fatal Influence defeating the Culling. It was JC Jane and Laney Reed versus Tatum Paxley and Izzy Dane. JC Jane ends up getting the win, but at the end of it, what's her face? Tatum Paxley ends up taking out the squad of the Fatal Influence and ends up standing tall, holding up the belt. Again, not JC Jane, Tatum Paxley is, they're putting. I don't think she's going to win, but they're doing a good job of making you believe and making you look like she's a credible threat and not just this week's, contender of the week, which she still might be and how I'm taking it. But again, it feels a little bit more of a legitimate threat than you would have probably seen when she initially won that battle royale to become the number one contender for JC James NXT Championship. So again, good back and forth between these women. Also, I like the promo earlier in the night where Tatum was actually just questioning, hey, Laney Reed's and Fallon Henley's and JC James' relationships and how she knows Izzy Dame has got her back, but do her girls have her back and whatnot. Again, little tidbits of the story, which again, it gets you kind of interested and excited to see. But overall, that was pretty much NXT. It was a pretty tame show. And that's not common for NXT to have two pretty kind of lower mid shows, or I guess not lower mid, but I guess mid-stable shows. There wasn't anything too high or too low. There was also two speed matches. Jasper Troy ended up getting a win on against blanking on the name right now, but he ends up getting a win. They're doing the men's speed tournament championship, similar to what they were doing with the women's one earlier. Jasper Troy ended up getting the win, and Axiom ended up getting a win, so they advanced forward. So we'll see how that plays out. Another thing that I'd probably put in my shake was Kalani Jordan getting shunned by the NXT women's locker room, and because she decided to side with Team TNA during the showdown, and not Jordan Reed, that's a football player. Jordan Grace ended up trying to talk with Kalani and just kind of gives her words of encouragement, but Kalani was not having it. So again, are we getting a bit of a heel turn? Are we spreading little crumbs for a Kalani Jordan heel turn? Something to keep an eye out. But we have NXT Halloween Havoc later tonight. We'll get to those predictions. But for now, we got to take ourselves straight into Dynamite for the coffee shop, which this is the aftermath of AEW Wrestle Dream. Again, I thought this was a great show. Okada Bandito is my top match of the night, of course. Again, is Bandito probably going to win this? Probably not. He's already tag team champions. He's Ring of Honor champion. To add a third belt seems unlikely, but again, this is more of the storyline between Okada and Takeshita. So obviously they put on a great match between Bandito and Okada. There were several points I'm like, hey, maybe Bandito might pull it off, but I had the good sense of knowing that Okada was going to winning it anyways. He ends up winning it, hitting the Rainmaker. But Bandito didn't make it easy for him, but Okada ends up winning. Don Callis' family comes out. Everyone comes out to celebrate, give Okada his props and everything, except for one person. He comes out later to his own music. Takeshita comes out, and he's just staring bullet hole down Okada coming down the ramp, and you have to have Don Callis and Kyle Fletcher kind of hold him back as he's like, yo, man, like, that's not cool what you did to me, this, that, and the third, and the show goes off the air. So, again, the build that they're doing between this Okada and Takeshita match is very fun. I wouldn't be surprised if Okada ended up losing his belt to Takeshita. That'd be a really fun match. But when we get to that, it's probably going to happen at Full Gear. That's going to be, I can guarantee that's already going to be a primo. That's going to be no less than a primo. It's probably going to be a top shelf. Maybe a presidential, depending on how everything plays out. But I guarantee you that will be bare minimum primo looking over the line. to top shelf, but I will put this at low top shelf just from right now. But I can tell you that's the match out of everything right now that I'm looking forward to the most. Moody had another primo on the show. O'Reilly versus Moxley, defeating Moxley via a referee punch because Moxley ended up getting himself disqualified. And again, this adds to the fact that, hey, maybe Moxley is having some self-doubt. He's not the guy that he says he is on the mic, and he really doesn't feel like, again, not as atypical for Moxley to go around this route the way he's been going through these matches. So I have that match as a mid just for the fact that, again, I'm curious to see how the storyline builds. I think there's a lot of hearsay. That's what the storyline is. I need a little bit more confirmation of what that storyline might be. So I'm looking forward to seeing when Moxley gets confronted about this, especially from the Death Riders, and seeing what happens with that. Maybe the Death Riders look for a new a leader to hold them down. So we'll see that moving forward. But Moody had that as a primo. I had that as a mid. Other things that we had on this card. The women's tag team match, there was a 4-way match between I can't list off everyone, but we had some new tag team. This is kind of hyping up the tag team tournament that they announced later on the night of the full bracket. But just for the 4-way match, we had Queen Aminata and Jamie Hayter ended up winning that match, and then they challenged the Sisters of Sin as their first challengers when the women's tag team tournament match starts. We had Willow Nightingale and what's her name that does the puppets? I'm blanking on her name. Let me bring up the card real quick. Willow Nightingale and Harley Cameron as a tag team. Megan Bain and Penelope Ford and Sky Blue and Julia Hart. Great match. This did a great job of basically doing the promotion to getting you hyped for. Thank you, Moody. He's in the chat for getting you ready for the tag team tournament match. And the tag team tournament was also, again, when they listed out that bracket, because later on that night we saw Athena come up to Mercedes after her interaction with Harley Cameron and Chris Statlander, talking about, hey, maybe we should be tag team partners. And so their tag team getting into that tag team tournament. We have Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa as a tag team. There's a lot of this tag team tournament match. The series is going to be spectacular. I can tell just from how it's going to play out. So they're going to do a good job of setting up and getting these people excited for how this tournament's going to be and who's going to be the new women's the inaugural women's tag team champion. So that was great. And Moody had this as a mid, and I have this as. I think I have this as, yes. No, I have this as, I didn't even really have this. I had more so the promo afterwards, but Moody had the ops over the Hurt Syndicate. This was a pretty typical match. I guess I have this as shake because the fact that this had the Trios Championship on the line, I thought this would probably have been the moment. Obviously, it's a TV show. It's a regular, Dynamite on a Tuesday night or Wednesday night that you're like, hey, they probably won't lose the belts. So if that's the case, don't put the belts on the line. Maybe use it as like, hey, we beat you, and then we get a tag team championship match. I was just very let down that this match ended up with a demand Ricochet coming out for interference and costing the Hurt Syndicate a match. And I actually have that aspect of the match as my shake. That's not my shake, as my Reggie, because I'm just, can we just be done with this? We know that the demand are not going to get over on the Hurt Syndicate. And I'm just like, can we take a break from now? It almost feels like the Seth Rollins and CM Punk. It's like, it's fun. We've seen enough of it. Can we just move forward for a little bit? Just give me 3 months where they don't interact or something. Because right now it just feels exhausting. And so it's very disappointing coming out of Wrestle Dream that we still have to deal with the demand versus the Hurt Syndicate. I was thinking when I saw that this match was the Ops versus the Hurt Syndicate for the World Trios Championship, I was like, okay, finally, like I said, the Hurt Syndicate are moving on, focusing on winning titles and trying to get the Trios Championship. Nope. We're still here with the demand. So just for that alone, that's my Reggie for the show. Moody did have a Reggie as well for himself, and that's Darby is still focused on the Death Rider. So pretty much the same complaint from my side, from the demand still being a problem for the Hurt Syndicate and them continuing that rivalry. Moody has the same issue with Darby Allin coming out and cutting a quick promo and saying that he's going to be the defender for AEW. He's going to die for AEW, which I'm like, bro, this is a business. Like, you don't need to die for a business. Like, that's a little extreme. But again, that's AEW's promos. They always got to take it to like the 12th degree of extreme and just can't keep it within baked in kind of reality. But yeah, I can understand that as well. I think from what I heard, just from my rationale to argue with you, Moody, on that would be that, as far as not argue, but on the Masked Man show, they had mentioned that, like, his issues with Moxley are pretty much kind of settled, you can say, but he still has, the rest of the Death Riders that he has to kind of concern himself with. That is like, all right, I got one of y'all down. There's 3 more of y'all to take out. So 3 or 4 more of y'all to take out. So, I guess you can argue that there is a little bit more for him to do with them, but I can understand your side as well, where it's like, man, can we get Darby focused on something else? And I'm curious to see, maybe you might put it in the comments. What do you think, Darby? Who do you think Darby should be focusing on right now moving forward if it's not the Death Riders and Jon Moxley? So, other things that we have here that we both agreed upon, I really enjoyed. It's in Shake, but I did enjoy the Chris Statlander ruining Mercedes celebration with the cake. I did like the Harley Cameron coming out with the puppet and like the puppet Monet. I thought that was really enjoyable. And, Mercedes just plays the heel really well. I like that she doesn't talk to the puppet necessarily, but she knows that Harley is there and saying like, you're being stupid and whatnot. But it all played out really well. And then again, Mercedes just being that, that heel is really fun. Moody said, I get the fact that you're on every site, every time mentality, but you shouldn't be the only character trait you have / rivalry. Agreed. Again, I totally understand your point because, again, it's the same kind of thing that I had with the Hurt Syndicate. But, again, hearing that argument from on the other side, I believe it was from Cass who said that, I'm like, okay, that also makes sense. But, again, sometimes they also did mention on the Masked Man show that sometimes AEW could just string out some storylines for the sake of stringing out. And I think in both these cases, this is what that is that sometimes, like, man, like, we've seen this enough. Can we move forward to something different for a little bit? You can come back to it, but kind of give us a break and let's see something different. But yeah, going back to the Mercedes, Statlander, and Harley Cameron, that was really fun. I really enjoyed that. And then my last name for AEW, the way I wrote this sounds like it would be Reggie, but I'm giving credit to Joe. And I didn't like Joe's weak reason for turning heel on Hangman. And I know when I was reading the Bleacher Report, they were like, he doesn't need to give a reason. That's blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no. First of all, I thought it was weak that Joe came out and did the whole Charles Barkley, because they were in San Antonio and he did the whole Charles Barkley, what's his face? I forget the big dude's name. He's gonna love all the big women that you guys, these fat women that you guys got in San Antonio. I'm like, all right, cool, yeah, typical heel stuff. And then his whole reasoning was like, I don't need to provide a reason for you guys. And it's like, bro, like, if that's his reasoning was that, like, if I see somebody that's on the top, I'm always gonna come after them. But I'm like, okay, so where was that for like the last 8 months? You know what I'm saying? Like, the logic doesn't make sense. So I consider it weak. I didn't think it necessarily needed to be an in-ring promo like that right after the match. It could have been him just walking backstage and just kind of it just didn't work for me overall. But I give Joe, but knowing Joe and the mic work that he's able to do, I'm not there to put it quite yet into Reggie. That's why I put it in the Shake. But if you give me another one of these in the next couple of weeks, I got to do it, Joe. I got to do it. I got to put it as Reggie. But for now, you get a Shake. I don't like the reasoning. I thought it was just like, hey, we just need – it almost felt like from a non-kayfabe storyline standpoint, it's just like you wanted to just flip sides just to flip sides. And so I not digging the reasoning, the rationale behind it. But Powerhouse Hobbs, that's what his name. I did like his interactions while Joe was cutting the promo and just kind of saying like, "Oh, y'all got some heavy women," and was like talking about how the whole squad was like, all the Dallas sports team, the Texas sports teams were sucking ass. He mentioned your Rockets, Moody. I thought that was funny. He talked about the Cowboys sucking and whatnot. So there were some interactions as far as like I could see them being enjoyable as the heels, but as far as your first night after, especially when the whole setup is like, why, Joe? Why? I thought that was a pretty weak. Let's see what else. Moody said, I like the idea that Oz becoming the new Death Riders for the Hangman. That'd be fun. Like I said, I do think there is storyline between them. I just didn't like the reasoning, the rationale. At least, like, he didn't really give a rationale. So I'm like, then why even have this promo? That's how I kind of feel about it. I'm like, if you don't have a reason, and don't tell me your reason. You don't have anything. Joe is a more believable bad guy. Joe is he can make anything believable because it feels like he ain't playing a character. He's just playing himself. And he's very eloquent in how he speaks. And whether it be he being a heel or a face, that it's like, man, I'm here for Joe. And again, I'm actually more excited that there is the Joe and Hangman rivalry is continuing forward. I just wish there was a little bit more rationale that was baked in rather than just like, oh, you're on top, so I'm going to be coming for you. Then why didn't you do that with Moxley? Why didn't you do that? Why don't you do that with everybody? It just seems like it just seems surface level. Like I said, it does. I don't believe that, and so maybe there is something deeper that comes from this. But for right now, the way you started it off, I need a little bit more meat to the bone. I think that might be it for Dynamite. Yep, that is it. But nonetheless, it was a really good aftermath of Wrestle Dream and kind of setting us up for the road to Full Gear, which will be like in about 3 weeks, somewhere around Thanksgiving time. So let's move over to the book of wrestling. Let's head over to the gallery. Book of Wrestling. We have 2 on the docket. First one, No Mercy, October 18th, 2003, a daddy-daughter match. WWE No Mercy took place in Baltimore, Maryland. In the main event, Brock Lesnar retained the WWE title against The Undertaker in a biker chain match. Also on the card, Vince McMahon defeated his daughter Stephanie McMahon in an I Quit match. Interestingly, intergender matches were barred under Maryland State Athletic Commission rules, but WWE paid the fine in advance and went ahead with the match. Moody added in his comments, the more you look at Vince's history, the more sociopathic he seems. But seriously, though, also, this is a 2-for-1 Happy to Annie to WWE's power couple, Steph and Triple H. So, yeah, I mean, you could even get that watching. I mean, I do rewatches of, like, the old Attitude Era, and yeah, it really sticks out how you could just tell it's just like this guy is just fulfilling whatever. Like, it almost feels like we were in his playpen, and he's just like, yeah, this is my show. It clearly felt like his show, and he was just kind of getting out ideas that, like, he didn't care if it was for the audience or for I'm running a television show. He's like, if I wanted to do this, I wanted to do this. And sure, that is your right. You were the owner of the company, but at the same time, you're making a television show. And there's very many times you can go back and look like, who is this for outside of this man? Even a lot of the comedy that goes back through it, it's just like, only person that really enjoys this is Vince McMahon. This is clearly Vince McMahon's sense of humor, and this is not humor that is palatable for an entire audience for you to sell on television. So it is what it is. I do believe they talked about this match also during the Mr. McMahon doc that was put out on Netflix. So yeah, just another one of the cases where you're like, hey, Yeah, he wanted to beat the shit out of his daughter, but he also just did it in kayfabe, quote unquote. Moody wrote on the comments. Yeah, he also wanted to beat the shit out of his own son too, and he did that several times with Shane. Which again, some of the stuff you just like when you look back on it, it's like, yo, there's too much bleeding of reality for this to feel like it's kayfabe all the time. It just feels like you're just trying to express yourself in a way, and that you can kind of say you can claim culpability, saying like, oh, it's just TV. That's just not me. That's just my character turned up to, 15. And it's like, okay, buddy, sure it is. Other note in the book of wrestling, there's a great concept for the millennium. The first Taboo Tuesday was October 19th, 2004. I actually like this concept too. I really did. And, having the fans vote and whatnot, what the match would be or who the opponent would be. Who the hell is Carmella? Clearly not that Carmella. Let me see who you're talking about. Yeah, I'm not sure either. But yeah, we had some fun matches, some interesting matches on here. I won't say fun, but the concept itself was really fun. Yeah, I do not know who Carmella is. And that's Christy. Yeah, that might have been one of the Diva tournaments things that they did when they were Diva Search tournament matches that they were probably doing or something like that. But yeah, good concept in the sense that, like, yeah, it was really bleeding edge into, like, it was almost, again, WWE, you can, for a lot of his credit, you can kind of give them is that they're ahead of the game. They try to stay ahead of the game as far as being in tune with developing technology. And this is one of those cases. Even when you go back to even before they had WWE Network, they had WWE 24/7. Now, it wasn't as widely available for, as WWE Network was at the time, but it was the first push of, making WWE content, archival content, accessible to an audience for a fee. So again, thinking about the streaming, moving the show into HD, this, that, and the third, like, there are some things that you can kind of give credit for WWE as far as just like pushing the advancements of how we consume this entertainment. Yeah, adding notes, novel concept, honestly, but then again, I imagine a bunch of trolling write-ins from Reddit wanted to see a Brawl and G-string match from Jade and Tiffany nowadays. Yeah, Frax, I can imagine that as well. That is it for the Book of Wrestling, but I did mention we did have a current event here, though, that Moody added. He's asking a question, but we kind of mentioned this earlier when we were talking about it on Raw. Is Jey Uso hated or just overpushed? And Jey Uso, as I mentioned, WWE's top 3 dislike videos of the year now belong to Jey Uso. Number 1 is him becoming world champion at WrestleMania 41. That has 1,111 dislikes. Jey Uso defeating Austin Theory within 1 minute had 89,000 dislikes. And then this past week, Jey Uso winning the Raw Battle Royal has 84,000 dislikes. And again, I mentioned WWE, Fightful asked WWE whether that was going to influence their decision making or their booking as regards to Jey Uso, and they said absolutely not. They obviously are aware of it, but they don't put too much stock on it. And I think, again, I don't know where that's coming from, because obviously when he's in the stands and he's coming out every week, everyone is hyped. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't seem like there is any falter as far as like when you see Jey Uso on television, that he is not one of the most over characters on television. So again, we say that these are huge numbers and it's their most disliked, but again, it's 112,000 people that dislike the video. There's millions of people that watch this show. So if you take that from a percentage aspect, that's what, like 1%, 2% of the audience doesn't like what they saw. And a lot of people are a little bit more vocal. I don't know what it is. Maybe I have no rationale as to why. Jey Uso doesn't bother me. I do think for me it's more, I would say he probably leans a little bit more to like the kids, and then sometimes he's more of like kind of like Cody, where it's just like he's cool. Like, I don't have a problem with them. I think it's just more of like kid friendly rather than like someone as an adult that I can chew on. Though I do think there are elements when he is great with emotions and emoting his emotions, especially when he doesn't have to say. You can see a lot of it in his facial reactions as far as like him being disturbed or being annoyed or whatnot. But I'm not in the camp of saying that I dislike Jey Uso. I honestly don't know where this comes from, other than like it's the internet, man. Like, but again, those numbers. Now, if we're talking about these numbers are reaching like 500,000, all right, maybe we might have something there. But I'm not reading into much that though 112,000 people are mad that Jey Uso won at WrestleMania when clearly everybody was hyped for this man when he won at the Royal Rumble and became the champion. So I'm missing, like, there's something in the narrative that is missing that we can't tell by these numbers as far as why. And again, to me, those numbers aren't high enough to say that like, oh, we need to make a change within Jey Uso's character, or we need to not keep. We don't need to push him. Is he over pushed? I don't know. I don't think it's he. Maybe the over pushed, but again, I don't know how is he over pushed. Other than like you might be tired of the entrance or something like that. I just don't. I don't have a good rationale. I don't have a good rationale, but it is something that I've seen pop up on internet. But I think that's just more of just the internet just finding something to talk about rather than being something substantial. But I'd be curious to hear your opinion on that, Moody. If you comment and or whatnot, we'll talk about it next week as well if we have time. But that is it for the Book of Wrestling. We can head over to the bodega. Not the bodega. I always mess it up. It's the boutique. That's what happens when you got two stores with B's in their name. SmackDown I thought it was a pretty entertaining show as well. I've liked SmackDown. People say Raw's been the better show. I've actually really enjoyed SmackDown for the most part. If I had to power rank my shows, it's obviously Dynamite and AEW is probably number 1. I would probably put SmackDown number 2, NXT 3, maybe Raw last. I don't know. I'd have to think about it right now, but I really do like SmackDown the last couple weeks. I thought we both agreed on, Moody and I both agreed that the primo on here was Ilya Dragunov, continuing the U.S. Championship Open Challenge. His first challenger was Aleister Black, and Aleister Black coming out with his wife, Zelina Vega. Great looking entrance. I'm really happy for Zelina in this change of character and, you know, kind of leaning into, you know, her other personality traits that she has, because Zelina's a very eclectic person as well. Obviously, I didn't think Ilya was going to win. Was going to lose this match. I did feel like Damian Priest was going to come, but I thought it was going to be more. I thought he was going to have a little bit more interference. So the fact that it just grabbed his attention and Ilya was able to hit the Moscow torpedo to get the win, not bad, not bad. I guess it's just funny because I would say I almost kind of wish they protected Aleister a little bit, that it ended in a DQ, but I get it. You wanted to have he still was protected in the sense that there was interference, even though Damian Priest didn't actually do anything. He just kind of caused a distraction. You still kind of protected Aleister from that loss, and you gave Ilya in his first United States Open Championship challenge match a definitive win. So great match nonetheless. I think it went at least through like 2 commercial breaks if I recall, but I really enjoyed that match. And then I also, again, really like the look of Aleister Black and Zelina Vega coming out together. I'm really excited to see how their storyline plays out moving forward. We had a lot of mids. One that we agreed on 2 of them. Actually, we agreed on all of them. We agreed that the MFTs versus Rey Fenix and Shinsuke Nakamura, that was a great match. It was a fun match. MFTs look way better with the face paint going on, and it's really exciting to see that. Sucks for Rey Fenix because I feel like this is his 3rd tag team partner, because I feel like after Andrade, he had someone else as a tag team partner that I'm blanking out on, and now we have Shinsuke Nakamura. Hey, as long as they seem like they have a good kind of connectivity as far as like their movesets and how they can kind of play off each other, then I'm like, hey, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point Nakamura and Rey Fenix kind of won the championships. It's early, but I am curious to see how that tag team plays out. But the MFTs looked really good on both sides, on this match. And, you know, Jacob Solo also was really fun in that match as well. So really enjoyed that. Looking forward to the MFTs versus the Wide Six when that eventually occurs. I personally enjoyed you had this as Shake, but you had the match as Shake. But I had the match as a mid. Tiffany Stratton over Kiana James, and I put this mostly in mid because I'm like, man, okay, Kiana, like you seem like you're getting really comfortable and coming back from your knee injury, and you put on a pretty good match with Tiffany Stratton. Obviously, I didn't think you were gonna win, but again, I came away like, hey, okay, Kiana, like you can hang in the ring, and that's mainly me. I'm sure she's wrestled a lot back in NXT, but obviously she's been hurt, she's been off TV, so it's a good refresher to see her back on TV and be in a match with someone like Tiffany Stratton. And then again, they mentioned during the match that Tiffany's only been around for like 4 years, and so doesn't have that much ring. She's been in the ring a lot, but compared to her peers, she's still kind of a newbie in that sense that like, you're kind of having to carry the weight of this match with someone like Kiana, who's really hasn't had that much ring experience since she's come back from her injury. That you gave her a great match and it was entertaining enough that I was like, okay, Kiana, you look like a legit threat in this ring, and I'm looking forward to seeing you continue to, feel more comfortable coming back from that your knee injury. So I really enjoyed that match. But the real highlight from this that we both agreed on was the return of Jade Cargill, initially coming out, saving Tiffany Stratton, beating up Kiana James and Julia, and then they're in the ring standing with one another, and Jade raises up Tiffany's hand. She gives her belt back. Seems like all's cool. They're about to leave, and then all of a sudden, wow! Jade Cargill takes out Tiffany Stratton, officially turning heel for the first time in her WWE career. She puts a beat down on her for a few minutes outside over by the commentary, to the point where, people had to come out and take her off of her and kind of stop her from attacking Tiffany Stratton. Backstage, she gets interviewed by Kathy Kelly about her actions, and she said, I used to think that, patience would be rewarded, but now I realize it's not patience, but it's power, and I got a lot of power, and she's going to be exerting her power. So again, tonality or tone, I need a little bit more, believability and some bass in her voice, which means I need a little bit more believability. But I do think this is going to be an interesting, and I think it's going to work out for her being a badass, because again, she just has that appearance that like you do not want someone like her on your bad side, and if she's on your bad side, good luck. So looking forward to seeing how this heel Jade Cargill plays out, and hey, it might end up getting her an actual championship. And I think we've said this before, maybe she could. We've had her in other matches when we've had to make predictions that, hey, I think this might be the time Jade wins. I think this will be the time Jade wins, and she ends up losing. Hey, maybe this heel run might be the thing that gets her over, especially when she's got the belt and she's cutting a heel promo. I think it might be getting her over to the fact where it's like, I think she might be getting fans on her side as a heel. So looking forward to that. And then finally, the main event of the match was Drew McIntyre over Jimmy in a no DQ match. This was fun as well. Obviously, Drew was going to win this. I hope Drew was going to win it, because I feel like Drew is like, we say Drew can take an L, and no, it really doesn't matter. But like at some point, you'd be like, come on, man. Like, I wish it didn't. Drew got to win sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Like, he can't be taking L's all the time. And I'm glad he ended up winning. Going back to real quick, Moody said could have ended the attack with a jaded at least. Sure, yeah, I agree with that. But hey, maybe you could have maybe that continues on next week. You got a little. Well, no, they have their title match now booked for Saturday night's main event. So we'll see how that plays out. But I can see that, especially if she did a jaded on the announce table. That would have been dope. But you gotta build to that. Maybe that happens on Saturday night's main event. We'll see what happens. But yeah, getting back to Jimmy Uso and Drew, I thought that was fun. And I believe that Drew did not attack Jacob Fatu last week. I actually think Cody Rhodes did it. I think Cody Rhodes did it. Because the fact that earlier in the night, at the beginning of the show, Cody comes out and talking about like, oh, I did something that I never did, and I ended the match with, hitting Drew McIntyre with the title belt and things of that nature. Why should I apologize? Should I apologize? No, I shouldn't. And it's just like, that's again, Drew said it perfectly. Corporate Cody, because Cody can do anything he wants, and then these fans are going to cheer for him. I'm on Drew's side on this. I'm 100% on Drew's side. I do believe Cody did it. And I believe that we're going to get on the heel run of Cody, but is the heel run of Cody going to be similar to Dominic Mysterio, where like the fans are just not going to boo him? I don't know, but I do believe, Drew, that he didn't do it. I believe that Cody did it, and that's going to get Jay and Jimmy on Cody's bad side, but especially Jimmy, because even Jimmy, when he was having that backstage conversation with Cody, and after Cody had walked out to go go out to the ring, they lingered the camera on Jimmy, and Jimmy just was kind of looking like, he had like that I don't trust you kind of look on his face, and so I'm curious to see how that plays out. But we both agreed that was our mid. But overall, pretty enjoyable show of SmackDown. Again, a lot of good stuff to move forward. As far as like building storylines and getting us to Saturday night's main event, which is next week. We do not do Saturday night's main event as part of the counter for predictions, so that will just be a no contest. But this is probably going to be one of the more consequential Saturday night main events, probably since the initial one, because again, we know at least there's going to be a title change that occurs when Jey Uso versus CM Punk. But hey, maybe that, like I said, I teased like maybe that might end in a no contest because of Bronson and Braun security. Maybe Jade Cargill ends up getting the championship over Tiffany Stratton. Who knows what's going to happen? But we have at least 3 title matches, maybe 4, because maybe Tiffany, maybe Becky and Maxine, and I think the whole card might be title matches because maybe the Y6 versus the MFTs might be on there too. I got to look at the entire card, but it should be this is probably one of their more intriguing Saturday night main events that they've had since probably the first one that they've had. So that's it for the week in wrestling. Let's get into the pop-up show predictions for NXT Halloween Havoc tonight. We have 6 matches, and I can already tell you, it's funny because Moody, you put in your predictions like last night, and you had different predictions than when I looked at it this morning. So initially we were going to have 3 differences in opinions, but then you flipped your opinions to basically making us both agree at the same time. But let's go through the card. First match we have on here is Javon Evans and Leon Slater versus Mr. Iguana and La Parca. And we both went with Javon Evans and Leon Slater. You had it, Moody. I'm rooting for everyone black, best black luchadors in the world. Oh, well. So, again, there is an element that I kind of wish that someone from AAA would kind of get these wins, but I don't think WWE's on that time yet, especially when you got these 2 high flyers, these 2 young up-and-coming athletes like Leon Slater and Javon Evans, that you want to push them even more. That, like I said, this is just going to be a great lucha match between these 4 men, and it might be the show stealer of the match of the night here. So looking forward to that. The Broken Rules match for the NXT Tag Team Champions. This is one of the ones that you had, Moody, where initially you had the Dark State, and I wouldn't have blamed you of putting the Dark State, because I was kind of leaning in that direction, but I was like, I think the fact that they are the Broken Hardys makes me lean toward the Broken Hardys, just because I'm like, plus you only held the title for like 2 weeks. There is an element of like, okay, the Hardys don't need the NXT titles, but when you have this gimmick change, I don't think you're going to end up losing this match, though the numbers don't lie, and they might spell disaster for the Hardys, but I think the gimmick change actually gives them a little bit of gives them the edge here that we both went with the Broken Hardys. You said NXT titles were alone for the Dudley's retirement match. Hot potato back. Plus, I don't know what the Hardys are going to do with them. But you wrote Broken Hardys. Did you mean Dark State or Broken Hardys? I'm confused on who you have in this match. So right now, I'll let you put it in the comments if you're still watching. But right now, we're both tied with that, with the Broken Hardys. Day of the Dead match for the NXT North American Championship. Ethan Page versus El Hijo del Wagner Jr. Again, I kind of want to pick, similar to you, I kind of want to pick Dr. Wagner Jr. It is his match type. I feel I'm just like you though. I'm going Ethan Page. It's you said too important of a title ? I really want to give it to Dr. Wagner Jr. Same here. I do kind of want to give it to Dr. Wagner Jr. I just don't believe NXT's WWE's on that time to be giving their belts out to AAA. So I think if you were, I could see Mr. Iguana winning a championship. I could see Vikingo winning a championship, but right now, I think these are more used to kind of give you a different flavor of title matches. And I'm going to go Ego retaining his title. Same as you. North American Women's Championship, Zarya defending the Women's North American Championship on the behalf of Sol Ruka for against Blake Monroe. And we are both going Blake Monroe. I probably would have guessed that Blake probably win this too, because I feel like, again, there's some friction between Blake and Zarya that's been, they had some breadcrumbs over the last few weeks that, yes, you have a real injury with Sol Ruka, but I do think that by having this storyline play out where she defends on her title, maybe Zarya ends up losing the match. I just kept my right. Okay, cool. So, yes, we all are agreeing on these matches here. Moody just confirmed that he also picked the Hardys. But, yeah, going back to Blake Monroe and Zarya, I do think there is a bit of – I feel like there is a little bit of hesitancy between Sol Ruka allowing Zarya to defend her title. But she said that's her girl, so she's going to let her defend her title. And it sucks because I would hate for Zarya to lose her first title defense match, but for a storyline aspect and maybe some shenanigans coming from Blake, I think this is time for Blake to get her first singles title. Or not? No, did she hold the title before? No, I don't think she did. But yeah, I think Blake. We both agree Blake ends up getting the title as well. So new North American champion Blake Monroe, women's champion Blake Monroe. Moving over to the NXT Women's Championship, JC Jane versus Tatum Paxley. We both have JC Jane retaining. And I do think this is going to come from Izzy Dane being jealous of Tatum Paxley and costing her the match. I don't believe that. I think that little tease that Tatum Paxley said on NXT earlier this week, where she's like, I know Izzy has my back, but does Laney Reed and Fallon Henley have her back? I don't believe so. I think those words are going to bite her on the back, and I think Izzy Dame is going to turn on Tatum Paxley. Because even then, the last couple of weeks, we've seen Izzy be a little rude to Tatum Paxley. That I wouldn't be surprised if she just was like, no, that should be me in that spot and not you. And she ends up costing her the title match. And maybe she ends up leaving the calling, because I know Shawn Spears would not be happy about that. Because I feel like Shawn Spears and the rest of the calling actually do care about, in a kayfabe, care about Tatum Paxley, that they would be off put by Izzy Dame turning her back on Tatum Paxley like that. And JC Jane, we both had JC Jane retaining. And this was another one where you had flipped your decision. And earlier you had Trick Williams, I believe, as your winner. But NXT Championship match, Ricky Saints versus Trick Williams. We both have Ricky Saints retaining. You said just because Trick is black don't mean I'm stupid. I don't know what that means. No titles for WWE and Blake Monroe yet. This would be a first. Okay, it was probably getting confused of her holding up somebody's belt after after like a match or whatever. But yeah, I don't know what that means, Booty. But yeah, sure. I do think this is kind of trick send off for him to go to the main roster, though. I do think he's going to end up on the main roster after this match. So we got Mickey Saints both retaining, and we have a tie on the books already. That's unfortunate. I wish there was ties that we could just have it where like we had something a pick's different. But hey, sometimes you gotta go what you believe in and not overbook it. And I don't think we overbooked it. We have one title change here. That makes sense, and everyone else retaining. If I had to pick anything else, like I said, I could see Dark State defeating the Hardys because, to your point, Moody, would be a kind of like a we wanted to have that match between the Dudleys. Now that's happened. The numbers don't lie. They're in favor of Dark State. We can have the Hardys drop the belt to Dark State, and that gives a little bit more legitimacy to Dark State to win this match. But are we gonna have two champions lose their themed matches? And Dr. Wagner Jr. and the Hardys? I don't believe so. So if I was to pick Dark State beating the Hardys, I would almost have to pick Dr. Wagner Jr. to beat Ethan Page. But maybe I'm just overthinking it. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, it's a reference to your first prediction with Leon and Javon. Okay, I was reading that. I was like, I don't understand what that's coming from, but okay. Man, I'm almost trying to play. I think I might play myself and pick Dark State. But no, I'm gonna stick with it. I'm gonna go with the Hardys. I'm not gonna play myself. We're gonna have to deal with the draw. But that is it for the NXT Halloween Havoc. We do have one. We have two. I don't have mine written here, but we have two champions of the week. Moody's first one is A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth. Whoever came up with the meme, with this meme, and it's the Samoans and Cody. Triple H is holding up his little kid, and then LA Knight is drowning, and then everyone underwater is Carmelo Hayes, Penta, Julia, Motor City Machine Guns, Chelsea Green, DIY, Randy Orton, Bailey, Ray Phoenix, Big Jim, Street Profits, Roxanne Perez, Sheamus, Drew McIntyre, and Austin Theory. That's hilarious, but yeah, for sure. You can elaborate on that through comments or on next week when you come back. My champion of the week, I don't have it listed, and I'll call it as a TBD champion, but Tony Khan during the FTR Young Bucks backstage segment, where again Tony just throwing money out there, man. Like he's given at least $1.5 million worth in prize money within like the last month. I'm like, bros, I get you're a billionaire, so like 1.5 million ain't really nothing to you, but there is a 4-way match that's happening tonight on Collision between the FTR and the Young Bucks versus blanking on the team right now, but there's a match for $400,000 on the line. But the Young Bucks were knocking on Tony's door, and he basically opens the door, but Tony has such a hard time not looking directly in the camera, like he's saying it. He's saying an announcement, but you're like, bro, you're not saying an announcement to the audience. You're having a conversation with the Young Bucks. Stop looking into the camera. But the dude had the hardest time not looking into the camera, and it's just like, Tony got them Cash Patel bug eyes, bro. Like hilarious, but that's a TBD. Champion, I need to come up with the title of the name, but that was just hilarious to me where I'm like, Tony, stop looking at the camera. Like, just keep looking. Make sure you're paying attention to the conversation that you're having with the Young Bucks here. But those are our champions of the week. That is the week in wrestling. And that is it for episode 68 of the Wrestling Rehab podcast. And we will come back with you next week, giving a shout out to everybody. Thanks for participating. Thanks for Moody for jumping on and giving some context in the chat. Glad to have you back next week and recapping everything that happened on Halloween Havoc and gearing up to talk about Saturday night's main event. Follow us everywhere on the socials, on YouTube here. Obviously, like, comment, subscribe. You can find us on TikTok, Instagram. Email us at the Wrestling Rehab podcast. Correct me if I'm wrong, at gmail.com. We also are on all podcast platforms that you use, whether it be Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever you can get us. Make sure to follow. We'll catch y'all next week for episode 69. I guess you can call that the Beavis and Butthead episode because obviously there's an innuendo there. But until next week, y'all, we'll catch y'all. Peace.